Hey guys, Spirit of the Lie here. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Aztecs and a little mystery that's been developing around them for a few years. As I pointed out in a recent video on the June patch winners and losers, despite a common perception that Aztecs are an elite top-tier civilization, after a couple weeks on the new patch, they landed in the bottom 5 by win rate, whether you include all maps or just Arabia specifically. The patch is still relatively new, and they've actually moved up to now the 7th worst in the last week since that video as more data comes in. But it raises the question of whether Aztecs are in fact a potential bottom 5, or maybe more safe to say a bottom 10 civ now on the ladder. Now, despite this, if you look up pro player Arabia tier lists from the last month, or really any time frame, Aztecs are almost universally claimed to be in the highest S tier. In this video, we're going to explore this increasingly conspicuous disconnect to see if we can figure out what's going on. Now, a quick disclaimer is I have no problem with skill-dependent civilizations if that ends up being the case. This is not a call to either nerf or buff Aztecs, and my main interest is just that the deeper we look at this, the weirder the whole situation becomes. Before we start though, I think we should have a quick refresher on why Aztecs are considered so strong in the first place. First, their villagers carry more resources, giving you a strong economy. Their Eagle Scout is a stronger version of the Scout Cavalry and reveals the map a bit faster, so it's better at exploring. They start with plus 50 gold, giving them one of the strongest militia rushes. They then create their military units faster, which is great for building up archer numbers, for example. In Castle Age, you have several good options, with Eagle Warriors, good crossbows, and great monks. And in the late game, you have good siege, infantry with extra attack and gambesons, situationally useful Jaguar Warriors, which can be spotted now and then, elite Eagle Warriors that are incredibly effective at raiding, elite skirmishers with +1 range and attack, decent enough arbalesters, arguably the best monks, and more relic gold to keep generating your gold-intense units. There's a lot here to like for a 1v1 Arabia civilization. What's missing from this though is that many of these things have been nerfed in some way over the last 4 years. Over that time, the carry bonus for villagers was dropped from +5 to +3, the Eagle Scout had its line of sight dropped by 1, meaning that it's not that much better at scouting now than cavalry, their faster created military bonus dropped from +18% to +11%, Eagle Warriors' food cost was raised from 20 to 25, longswords, which have an attack bonus against Eagle Warriors, have also had a series of buffs to make them more viable, and most recently, the Romans have been added. So far, Romans are currently one of the Aztecs' worst matchups on the ladder, with their excellent swordsman line and scorpions seemingly handling Aztecs' eagles and archers. In fairness, the Aztecs' Jaguar Warriors have had some improvements, but when you lay it all out, it's maybe not a stretch to form a narrative here that Aztecs were great at one point and had a well-deserved reputation, but the multi-year process of direct and indirect nerfs have made that reputation at this point somewhat out of date. We will get to the counter-arguments against this, but looking purely at ladder win rates, there is some evidence to support the idea. The earliest public documentation of win rates I know of was my Top Civilizations video in March 2019 on AoE2 HD, before the introduction of any of the nerfs I listed. This was the first time stats were being analyzed, thanks to Jerbot on AoEstats.io, and at that time, looking at Arabia all ELO ratings, the Aztecs were number 6 overall. Clearly, they were having success at every level, as this only included HD ranked players, which collectively had a reputation of being weaker than Voobly players. To see how that compares to more recent data, using AoEpulse.com, if we combine all data since the release of Dynasties of India, excluding the newest patch, we have 2.67 million ranked 1v1 Arabia games. It's quite the sample size. Over that 15-month time period, Aztecs have had a 48% win rate, which is good for 29th out of 42 civilizations, which is already quite the drop from where they were in HD. Now, I hear what some people might be thinking. Maybe this is a situation similar to Chinese, where including the whole player base is skewing the results. Maybe the lowest level players are just bad at properly using Aztecs, so let's remove games by everyone under 1200 ELO. The funny thing is it barely changes anything. They increased by 0.2%, moving up to 25th instead of 29th. That is better, but still below average. Well, maybe 1200 ELO players are still too low to fully utilize the latent power of the Aztecs. Let's look at just the top 100 accounts, which is around 2250 ELO. If we filter this way, Aztecs do better, no question, but are still just 13th, not even top 10. So far, this doesn't contradict the story that Aztecs are to some degree overrated based on past performance, and maybe players haven't updated their views to reflect the full impact of their nerfs. That's not to say they're bad or need a buff, but just that they're maybe not a top-tier civilization anymore. But there's a twist. If we filter to just 2500 plus ELO 1v1 Arabia over the last 15 months, meaning 2 players who are both in the top 30 accounts on the ladder are matched up, Suddenly, Aztecs are number 4. It's only 164 games, so let's not get too excited, but now we are talking about S-tier results, along with Huns, Mayans, Incas, Vikings, and Byzantines as a maybe dark horse civ. At this highest level of less than 0.1% of players, it now looks like there might be something to this, and the most elite players are perhaps correct in identifying the Aztecs are a top civilization for them specifically. Now, admittedly, these are terrible sample sizes, and realistically, we can't use 164 games as compelling evidence. But we have a whole other set of data we haven't looked at yet that focuses on mostly this group of players, and that's results in tournaments. If anything, those give even more support for the idea that Aztecs are really good in that setting and always have been. Now, the King of the Desert tournament by Mem is particularly useful here, as it gives us exclusively 1v1 Arabia matches, so it ensures we aren't getting novelty maps thrown in to give us extra variables. It's also a fairly large tournament with several rounds as well as civilization bans and a draft, so we can see what civilizations the players want to play and which they don't want to play against. Let's start with King of the Desert 3 in September 2020. In this tournament, Aztecs were either picked or banned in basically every series. In nearly 2/3 of the series, one of the players used their single ban to remove them from the map pool, so neither player could use them. And in all but one of the remaining series where they were available, one of the players then picked Aztecs to play. If you're curious, the one outlier where they weren't banned or picked was a round 1 matchup between Huang and Lix. In the tournament overall, Aztecs had 13 wins and 7 losses, and in fact, 2 of those 7 losses were from extreme underdogs in the first round. These included the number 64 seed Comten against the number 1 seed Viper, and number 60 seed Bad Koala against the number 5 seed Tato, which seem harsh to label as civ losses for Aztecs, but even including them, Aztecs had a solid 65% win rate in the tournament, which was among the best results. Jumping forward to King of the Desert 4 in November 2021, we have a similarly positive result for Aztecs. They went 5-1, technically with the highest win percent of any civilization, albeit with a ridiculously small sample size, and at least halfway through, Aztecs were tied with Mayans for having the most bans. I wasn't able to track down the final number of bans, but again the point remains, lots of bans and a good final result that doesn't contradict the claim they're a top civ. Finally, most recently in King of the Desert 5, this one was tracked by AoEstats.io, where Aztecs had the 4th best win rate of the civilizations that were regularly played, with also a very high ban rate and pick rate when available. In fact, looking just at the main event with the players making it farther into the tournament, Aztecs appear even better, with a 67% win rate and technically the highest ban rate. Everything here is consistent with the narrative that Aztecs are still great and have always been great at the top level, giving us 2 compelling parallel stories. On the latter overall, it seems Aztecs were at one point very good, but have been steadily dropping to now below average. Whereas at the very highest level of play, and I mean top 30 players level exclusively, there seems to be a track record of success both on the ladder and in tournaments for Aztecs, as a perennial S-tier civilization. So what accounts for this discrepancy? Is everyone outside of the top 30 players using Aztecs wrong? Well, to help settle this, I thought we'd bring in an expert and ask the Viper what he thinks is going on. I shared all of this with him, and he graciously agreed to come on and chat about it. I wanted to talk to him specifically because every single Viper Arabia tier list video he's ever made has put Aztecs in S tier, so he seemed like the perfect spokesperson for Aztecs. Let's go to that conversation now. Hey Viper, thanks for coming on, and it's nice to finally chat in real time. I'm hoping to get your expert opinion on a topic.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
I want to pick your brain about Aztecs specifically, and maybe I should start by asking, would you put Aztecs in S tier for a 1v1 Arabia tournament at the moment?
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of factors coming into play here, but for me personally, I think Aztecs are definitely still S tier. They're still top 10 for sure, in my opinion, but maybe they're not top 5 anymore, because the numbers you're revealing here are quite damaging to the civilization.
Interesting. I wasn't sure what you were going to say there. Do you have any thoughts on why Aztecs are performing so much better at that highest level? I mean, it's starting to be a noticeable disconnect.
Yeah, I mean, like if you go back 10 years even, like they had so many bonuses that came into play in a 1v1, and a lot of those have naturally been tuned down in recent years. And I think the main thing is just that Aztecs is a very simple and straightforward civ to play with very good bonuses, in particular for 1v1. And they also have these type of unit compositions that are super snowbally with like monks, eagle warriors, and siege. And the counter is kind of like knights and crossbow mix, but again, it's really hard to play double gold units as an opponent against eagles. And as I pointed out, the snowball factor with the Aztecs is just so extreme. That goes for Mines and Incas as well. Any save that can play those Eagle Warriors. And with extra HP on their monks as well, it gets so hard to take down. And if you convert 2 or 3 knights in a fight, that can flip the fight completely in your favor. And on top of that, at the start you have an Eagle Warrior, which makes laming, for example, a lot more easy to pull off. So it's just a civilization that no one really wants to play against.
So you mentioned monks there, and do you think maybe the very top level players are getting something out of Aztecs that other players just can't because they just don't have that micro ability?
Yeah, for sure. Like if you think about, you have like 5-6 monks, a lower elo player would probably struggle to get the max out of those, while a high level player would probably get most of those conversions pulled off. So I think it definitely comes into play that the lower elo players would struggle to execute properly. But at the same time, it's like even at lower level, all you need to do, it sounds very easy when I say it like this, but you just need to get those numbers out there, right? Get a lot of eagles out, get a lot of monks out, and most of the time the fights will go in your favor.
So what do you think about the influence of their worst matchups typically being infantry civilizations? So we're talking Bulgarians, Dravidians, Poles, Malay, and Romans. I think are their worst at the moment, all 5 of which have infantry as a big component. Do you feel like maybe some of these civilizations are beating up on them on the ladder, but aren't being picked in tournaments, so Aztecs end up avoiding some of their more difficult matchups?
Yeah, probably. I also think you have to take into account when it comes to competitive play, nerves and the occasion also comes into play. So like these easy execute snow valley strategies get a lot of higher potential due to, well, there's like a significant increase in mistakes in tournaments because of that. So when you have civilizations like Bulgarians you mentioned, they're not that good against a lot of other civs, and in a lot of cases you don't know what civ the opponent is going for. So you don't know if you're going to get this civilization against Aztecs, so it becomes a way higher risk to even pick that civilization to begin with. So obviously if you knew the opponent is going to play Aztecs, it would be way more viable to play a civilization like Bulgarians. But since you don't know, it's too high of a risk, so I think that's why.
To what extent do you think not having cavalry is a major factor for especially lower elo players?
Yeah, I think it's quite significant because if you think about it, there's only 3 civilizations that have Eagle Warriors in the game. So you don't play those very often if you play random civ, for example. There might just be the simple fact that people don't have the experience they have compared to the top level players with meso civs, compared to with cavalry civs, for example. So maybe that's also why meso civs, or Aztecs in this case, struggle more on the lower elo compared to the high level.
I really like that explanation, as I think it touches on why even a 2000 rated player isn't doing as well with Aztecs, is because I think there's a big difference between 2500, where, if you're top 30, you're probably playing full-time or nearly full-time, whereas anyone outside of that, probably the number of games you're playing drops quite quickly.
Yeah, for sure. And keep in mind as well, we spend hours and hours training behind closed doors with these civilizations as well. So we kind of figure out exactly all the nitty-gritty details to make a civilization. Like Aztecs is a cheesy civilization, right? So we spend so much time figuring out how exactly to make this cheese work. And the lower level players, the hobby players that jump in the evening and play a few games, they don't have the time to invest into things like this. So I think that's also why you see, like, again, the snowball civilizations in particular, like Aztecs. I think they are way more dangerous on the higher level.
So just one last question. Obviously, you're never going to get perfect balance with all the civilizations at every level, and that's just the way it's going to be. But how do you feel about ladder versus tournament weighting when it comes to balance for the game in general?
It's a really tough one. Like, I mean, you have to take both sides into account, right? Because something can be completely broken at the higher level, but at the lower level, it's like for example, Chinese. While they have a huge success on the high level and lower level, they're harder to play. So it's really hard to strike the balance in terms of exactly how to balance it. But I think in general, you have to just mostly balance towards the top while also trying to keep it fun for the bottom.
Yeah, for sure. It's very tricky to get that balance just right. Well, I won't take up any more of your time here, man. I greatly appreciate hearing your insights, as I was at a bit of a loss as to what was going on here. So thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
So there you have it, guys. Big thanks to Viper for making an appearance in the video, and whether you think the mystery is solved or not, I personally found it an interesting topic and discussion. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.